My name is Elise Monroe. I'm 30 years old, and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Savannah, Georgia. It's a warm and calm place, with trees that move gently in the wind and neighbors who mostly keep to themselves. I've lived here for the past 7 years, ever since my grandmother passed away and left me her small house. It's not big, but it's mine. I paint the kitchen walls every spring and grow herbs in the windowsill. I make coffee in the mornings, I clean in the evenings, and most days I work quietly at a small gift shop downtown that sells candles and handmade soaps. My life has been simple and quiet. Until last year, when everything changed. It started on a Tuesday evening. I was leaving the shop after closing and walking to my car when I saw him. A man was standing outside the bookstore across the street, looking at the display. He had that kind of face that catches your attention even in a crowd. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, and a smile that seemed to hold a secret. He noticed me looking and gave a short wave. I smiled back, not thinking much of it. That's how things begin sometimes, without warning or drama. Just a wave across the street. The next evening, he was there again. This time, he crossed the street and asked me about the shop. I told him we sold handmade things, all from local people. He said his name was Damien, and he had just moved to Savannah from Chicago. He was working remotely, doing something with marketing and health brands, he said. He spoke clearly, laughed often, and listened in a way that made you feel like your words mattered. I didn't mean to fall into anything. I had been careful all my life. But Damien had a way of making you feel seen. We started seeing each other more often. He'd wait for me outside the shop and bring coffee. He'd ask about my day and tell stories about his travels. Soon, we were spending our weekends walking by the river, sharing meals at small restaurants, and staying up late talking about the kind of life we both wanted. He said he wanted peace and honesty. He said he was tired of big cities and noise and people who cared too much about money. I believed him. He looked me in the eyes when he spoke, and I never once felt like he was pretending. He told me I was strong. He told me I made him believe in good people again. And when he finally said, "I love you," I believed that too. There was a part of me that still held back. I'd been alone for a long time, not because I was afraid of love, but because I didn't want to be hurt by someone who didn't understand how much I had to lose. My grandmother had left me a large part of her savings when she passed. She had grown up poor and saved carefully all her life. She told me once, "Elise, use this money to build something that gives you peace." I kept it safe in a special account. I didn't touch it, not even when I needed new tires or when the roof leaked. That money was for something real, for a small wellness shop, maybe. A little space where people could breathe and feel calm. One evening, Damien and I sat on the back steps of my house, watching the sun go down. He held my hand and asked me about my dreams. I told him about the wellness store idea. He got quiet and then said, "Why don't we make it happen? I know people who invest in health brands. We could build something real together, something that helps others too." I said I needed time. He said, "I'm not rushing you. I just believe in you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about the store, the peaceful space, the way he said we. I wanted to believe it was all true. A week later, I told him about the money. Not the full amount, but enough for him to understand what it meant. He didn't react with excitement. He got serious. He said, "You don't have to do anything, but if you want, I can help you make it grow. I can double it, even triple it in a year. I have connections, Elise. I just need you to trust me." I was scared. I told him that. He held my face in his hands and said, "You don't have to be afraid of me." I thought about it for days. Then I said yes. I transferred $70,000 to a new joint account he helped set up. He said it would go to suppliers and early marketing. He showed me mock-ups of the brand and product packaging. It all looked real. I felt hopeful and afraid at the same time. But mostly, I felt like something big was finally beginning. 3 days later, Damien stopped answering my calls. At first, I thought he was busy. He had told me he was flying to Miami for a quick meeting, but then the messages stopped. His social media disappeared. The email we used to share store ideas bounced back. I went to his apartment. The front desk told me he had moved out 2 days ago. I stood there, my hands shaking, my heart sinking lower with every passing second. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen with the lights off, the bank app open on my phone, staring at the zero balance in that joint account. It wasn't just the money. It was the trust, the stories, the feeling that I had shared something honest with someone who never intended to stay. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But I did nothing. I sat there in silence, unable to cry, unable to feel anything except disbelief. The next morning, I called the bank. They said the funds had been transferred to another account. Private. Unreachable. I called the police. They asked if I had a contract. I said no. They asked if I had proof he lied. I had text messages, but nothing that showed clear fraud. The officer said, "If you gave him the money by choice, we can't classify this as a crime without more evidence." I said, "But he lied to me." He replied, "It's not fair, but it happens more than you think." I walked home slowly. My legs felt weak. I passed by the shop and didn't go in. I couldn't. Everything I had believed in felt like it had fallen apart. My friends tried to comfort me, but their words felt hollow. Some of them asked why I had trusted him. Others told me to move on. No one understood what it felt like to have your faith stolen from you, not just your savings. I stopped answering calls. I stopped going out. I stopped looking people in the eyes. But I couldn't stay in that darkness forever. One morning, I woke up and told myself, "He took what he could, but he didn't take you." I got out of bed, made coffee, and applied for a part-time job at a local bakery. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I swept the floors, sliced bread, and smiled at customers even when it hurt to do so. I took cash in envelopes and hid them in my drawer at home. I didn't go out, didn't spend on anything I didn't need. My dreams had shrunk, but my strength was slowly returning. Weeks later, I found myself searching Damien's name again. I told myself not to, but curiosity won. And then I found him. A different profile. Different city. Same face. He was smiling next to another woman. The caption read, "My whole world." Before I share the rest of my story, could you please tell me where you're from? It gives me strength to know there's someone out there who listens to me, who understands me. It means a lot to me. My heart didn't stop when I saw his face again, but it did slow down. That kind of slow that makes your chest feel heavy, like you've stepped into cold water without warning. I stared at the photo. He had his arm around her shoulder. Her smile was wide. He looked proud, relaxed, like someone with nothing to hide. I clicked on the profile, trying to find a clue. The name was different. The city was different too. It said Denver. He had listed his work as a wellness consultant. There were only a few photos, and the account was new. I couldn't prove it, but I knew it was him. The same jawline, the same confident eyes, the same pattern of appearing, building trust, and then vanishing with more than just money. This man wasn't careless. He was calculated. And I was not his first. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I didn't scream. I just sat there and stared. And then I took a screenshot. I opened a new notebook and began writing. I wrote everything I remembered. Every message, every promise, every transfer, and every red flag I had ignored. I wrote until my hand hurt. Then I made a folder on my computer and saved all the screenshots of our texts, the payment receipts, the brand mock-ups, and now his new profile. I didn't know what I was going to do with it all, but I knew I wasn't going to stay quiet. I went back to the police with my new evidence. A different officer was on duty this time. Younger, sharper. He listened. He asked to see the screenshots and notes. He didn't promise anything, but he said something that mattered. "We'll open a case." I exhaled slowly. I didn't even realize I had been holding my breath. A few days later, I got a call from the same officer. They had started digging. Damien, or whatever name he was using now, had used several aliases across different states. He didn't have a criminal record, but there were similar stories. Women who had trusted him. Women who had lost everything. The officer asked me to come in. I brought my notebook and sat in front of him, feeling nervous but determined. After I finished explaining everything, he leaned back and said quietly, "You're not the only one." He turned the computer screen toward me. There were 3 other names listed. 3 women. 3 cities. Same method. Trust. Romance. Investment. Disappearance. I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to feel relief, knowing I wasn't alone. Another part of me felt sadder than ever, because now I saw clearly that this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a bad man who made a bad decision. It was a pattern. A man who studied hearts and chose to break them for profit. The officer gave me the phone number of one of the women. Her name was Mirella. That night I called her. I expected silence, maybe anger, but what I heard was quiet crying. He said I was his miracle, she whispered. I gave him my savings. I thought we were planning a life. I didn't speak for a moment. We cried together. We were strangers, but we carried the same wound. Over the next few weeks, Mirella and I spoke every evening. At first, we talked about what he had said to us, how similar his words were, how rehearsed they now seemed. But over time, our conversations changed. We started talking about ourselves, our dreams, our families, our losses, our hopes. Mirella was soft-spoken and thoughtful. She worked as a school nurse in Missouri and loved gardening. She said her friends stopped calling after they found out what happened. I told her I understood. Mine had faded too. Not because they were cruel, but because they didn't know what to say. Pain makes people uncomfortable. One evening, Mirella said, "Maybe we can't get our money back, but maybe we can make sure he doesn't do it again." That sentence stayed with me for days. I had been thinking only about my loss, but Mirella was thinking beyond herself. She was right. We started a simple blog. Nothing big. We called it Face Behind the Smile. We didn't post his real name or photo at first, just wrote stories. Real stories, our stories. How he spoke, what he promised, the signs we had missed. We wrote guides about online safety, warning signs, emotional manipulation, and how to report fraud even when you feel ashamed. We didn't expect anyone to read it, but they did. Emails began to arrive. Women from other states, even other countries. Some had only spoken to him online. Some had met him in person. Some had stopped just before sending money. Others had given everything. They said things like, "Your post saved me," or "I thought I was crazy, but now I know I'm not alone." I cried reading those messages, not because they were sad, but because they gave me back a piece of myself. Mirella and I became closer than friends. We became like sisters. We made a promise one night on the phone. No more hiding. No more shame. No more silence. It felt powerful to say that out loud. It felt like healing. Months passed. The case with the police was still open, but progress was slow. Damien was careful. He used fake names and temporary phone numbers. But the blog was growing. We started getting attention from small news platforms. One journalist reached out and asked to interview us anonymously. We said yes. The article came out a week later. The headline read, "The Man with Two Faces." how romance became fraud. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. People shared it. More women reached out. Each one added a piece to the puzzle. Slowly, the silence that had once made me feel trapped began to break. Meanwhile, I kept working at the bakery. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me structure. I saved again, slowly. Not to build a store. That dream had changed. I didn't want to shop anymore. I wanted freedom. I wanted peace. I wanted to help. Morella felt the same. She started writing short guides about emotional recovery. I focused on writing safety checklists. We worked late into the night on our little blog. We didn't get paid. We didn't care. We were turning pain into something honest. One day the officer called again. His voice was more serious than before. "We might have a lead," he said. "We need you to come in." My stomach tightened. I didn't know if I was ready, but I went. He told me they had found a pattern in Damien's accounts. A hotel booking in Atlanta under one of his fake names matched with an IP address from one of his emails. It wasn't enough to arrest him, but it was enough to trace movements. He said they were passing it to a cyber unit. It would take time, but something was finally moving. That night, I called Morella and told her. We didn't celebrate. We knew the road was still long, but we felt stronger than before. She said, "You know, he thought he was smart, but he didn't see this coming. Two broken hearts becoming something bigger." I smiled at that, because she was right. Months passed. Morella and I kept writing. We posted every week on the blog, always with honesty. We didn't try to make things sound better than they were. We told the truth about sleepless nights, about how hard it was to trust people again, about how shame still visited us when we were alone. But we also wrote about strength, about small victories, about the way healing doesn't look like a straight road. One day I wrote a piece called "It Wasn't My Fault." It was the hardest one I ever published. In it, I told the full story how I trusted him, how I lost everything, how I almost lost myself. But I ended it with one line. He took my money, but he didn't take my voice. That post got more views than anything else we had written. I started getting emails from people who said they had never told anyone their story until now. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was on my lunch break, sitting on a bench behind the bakery, eating a plain cheese sandwich and checking messages. The number wasn't saved in my phone, but I answered anyway. It was the officer from Savannah. His voice was calm but serious. "We've made an arrest," he said. My heart stopped. "Is it him?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "He was caught in Dallas under another false name, but the identity matches the digital trail we've been following. It's Damien." I didn't speak. I sat there in the sun, sandwich forgotten in my hand, just breathing. After a moment, he said, "We'll need your full statement again Now, as part of the official case, would you be willing to testify if this goes to court? I said yes. Without hesitation, I was ready. I called Morella that evening. She started crying as soon as I told her. I didn't think this day would come, she whispered. Neither did I said. But we didn't stop. That made all the difference. The next few weeks were full of forms, emails, and meetings. The process wasn't easy. There were lawyers, court dates, and legal words that felt cold and distant. But I kept my focus. Damien had used different versions of his story with each woman, but the core was the same. Build trust. Build hope. Then disappear. The police had traced financial movements, matched photos, and found several accounts connected to his false names. It wasn't just emotional harm. It was organized fraud. When I finally saw him again, it was in a courtroom. He walked in wearing a clean shirt, his hands in cuffs, and his expression flat. He didn't look shocked. He looked bored, like someone who had seen courtrooms before. I sat 2 rows behind the prosecutor's table. Morella had flown in and sat beside me. She reached for my hand. I felt her fingers shaking slightly. I was shaking too, but I didn't look away. He didn't glance at us once. He stared forward, silent, while the charges were read. 7 women had come forward by that point, from different places, with different stories, but all pointing to him and all showing the same pattern. The judge set a trial date. He was denied bail. After that first court appearance, Morella and I stepped outside into the cold air. We didn't talk for a while. Then she said softly, "He never once looked at us." I nodded. Because we're not people to him. We're pieces in a game. She paused, then added, "But we're the ones ending it." We stayed in a small hotel that night and talked about what we would do after the trial. Morella wanted to study part-time again, maybe get a degree in social work. I told her I had started painting again, something I had stopped after everything went wrong. We smiled when we talked about the future. For a long time, we hadn't done that. The trial lasted 4 weeks. Each day we sat in the back of the courtroom. Some days were hard. Some of the victims cried on the stand. I did too. But each testimony was like another stone on the wall we were building, proof that he couldn't hide anymore. In the end, he was found guilty of fraud, identity theft, and emotional deception for financial gain. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. He didn't speak when the sentence was read. He just looked down at the table like it didn't matter. But it did matter. To all of us. After the trial, something changed in me. I didn't expect joy or celebration. I didn't feel free all at once. But I did feel lighter, like I could stand up straighter, like I could look people in the eye again without carrying the weight of that shame. Damien was behind bars, but what mattered more was that I had not let him silence me. Morella and I continued the blog. It reached more people now. One local paper even wrote a short piece about the case and mentioned our work. We weren't famous. We didn't want to be. But we were proud. We knew we were helping others stay safe. We gave interviews to a small podcast once. The host said, "You're both incredibly brave." But I don't think it was bravery. I think it was survival. You get tired of being silent, so you speak. 1 year after the sentencing, I visited my grandmother's grave. I brought her favorite flowers, yellow lilies. I stood in the quiet mourning and whispered, "I didn't use your money the way I planned, but I used it to find my voice. I hope that's okay." I think she would have understood. Now I still live in the same little house. The kitchen walls are pale green. The herbs still grow in the window. The bakery job turned into something more stable. I work full-time now and help run the place. I even teach a baking class twice a month. Some days, I write late into the night. I'm working on a short book with Morella about emotional recovery and online safety. It's slow, but honest, like everything else we do. And sometimes I still think of him. Not often, not with anger, but with awareness. He was not a mistake. He was a lesson. And that lesson is now part of me. But it does not define me. Not anymore. A few nights ago, Morella and I met in person again. She visited Savannah for a weekend, and we walked by the river like we used to imagine we would one day. We talked about everything and nothing. As the sun began to set, she turned to me and said, "He took a lot from us, but in the end, we got something he'll never have." "What's that?" I asked. She smiled. "Peace." And in that moment, I knew she was right. This was never a story about loss. It was a story about finding your way back, even when someone tries to erase you. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.